First, let me thank my hosts who have invited me to Ghana for the Danjua festival, which is due to take place in Tamale. That is the reason why I'm here. And the questions that are being asked are therefore piggybacking on that invitation. If I understand your question well, you are asking about the role of Africans in the diaspora. You will note that as we speak now, people who can be described as Africans in the diaspora number anything between 200 million and 300 million to be found in all continents in the world. And the desire to come back home is not anything new. If you've read the history of people like Marcus Garvey and his Black Star movement, you will note that Africans who are taken out of this continent to be slaves have always wanted to come back. And I'm aware that the government of the Republic of Ghana did make a conscious decision to have what they called a year of return. I myself was here in a company of 200 ladies and gentlemen from the diaspora in Cape Coast in the year 2019. And I have no doubt in my mind that if Africa is to grow, our sons and daughters, wherever they are, must come back to the continent, not physically, but by way of having an emotional reconnection. Your own Kwame Nkrumah in the 1950s, when asked who is an African, he said, Africa is born in one. It is not necessary that you be born physically in Africa. Regarding the elections in Nigeria, of course, I'm not a Jewish prophet, so I'm not going to speculate as to who will be elected, but I believe that Nigerians will have the opportunity of making a clear statement that they want a united Nigeria. They want a Nigeria that will play its leading role in the continent of Africa. They want a Nigeria that is united in our diversity. They want a Nigeria where people are judged by the content of their character, not by their ethnicity or religious affiliation. And I hope that that decision will be made on Saturday, the 25th day of the month of February this year. I pray for them and I hope that they'll do the right thing. Because if they don't, then Africa will be the poorer. I could answer your question by posing yet another. How does a wound on your toe affect your body? Nigeria is a part of Africa. She's the most populous nation in the continent of Africa, the largest economy in the continent of Africa. If the elections do not lead to peace and stability, then Africa is the poor. And I don't think that that is a debatable issue. If Nigeria is unstable today, this West Africa will be unstable. And therefore, it is important that they have an election that is credible, that they retain their stability for the benefit of the people of Nigeria and the benefit of the people of Africa and the world by extension. I understand your question perfectly well. It's not just the Chinese. It's the IMF. It's the World Bank. It's the European Union. Almost all African countries are indebted. And I have no doubt in my mind that if Africa wants to enjoy true liberation, she must liberate herself from economic slavery. He who pays the piper calls the tune. And in this world, there is no free lunch. When the Chinese come, they will want a quid pro quo, whether it is in Ghana or Kenya or Namibia. And it is the duty of those who are in leadership to ensure that we immunize ourselves against the machinations of all foreigners, whether they come from China or from the United States of America or from the European Union. This world, the truth be told, is a jungle. It is survival of the fittest and the dying of the least suitable. That is the real world. So you style up or you are consumed. You know, COVID did have an impact on all economies in Africa and the world, without doubt. And indeed, there are many reasons and excuses that we can give, but we are also co-authors of our own misfortune. African countries have been mismanaged for many years. So COVID only came 2 years ago, and all the other things came only a few years ago. We've got to look inwards and look at mismanagement, look at wastage, look at corruption, look at all those things combined and ask ourselves, what have we done wrong? Because if we want to look for excuses, we'll always find them. There is no shortage of excuses. But the truth be told, many African countries are victims of bad governance. COVID and the others are just recent excuses, or reasons, if you may. You know, the post-colonial African country is a weak economy. Look at the GDP of Ghana. It's a small economy. It's smaller than the GDP of Qatar. Look at the GDP of Kenya, 110 billion. It is smaller than the economy of the state of Massachusetts. Look at the GDP of the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is smaller than the profits of Shell last year, which was 150 billion. Disunited as we are, most African countries are not viable. And until one day we sit down and tell ourselves in no uncertain terms that Africa must rethink the way she is doing things, we are going nowhere. I cannot manufacture good news, and Africa cannot manufacture good news. We must face the truth with fortitude. And what is the truth? The truth is the 55 or 54 odd countries that constitute the continent of Africa are not viable, most of them. And therefore they are susceptible to manipulation. And that is why they are manipulated every other time. The Chinese come here and manipulate us. The Americans manipulate us. The British manipulators, the Arabs manipulators, the other countries manipulators, and all we are doing on a daily basis is lamentation. For how long shall we lament? So we are co-authors of our own misfortune. And nobody is going to come here and do things that are in our best interest. We must define our best interest and do what is in our best interest. And there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. The ECOWAS region could have done better, but I listened to Aliko Dangote recently. And he was complaining that even him, who is the largest, one of the largest investors in Africa, to move goods from Nigeria to Benin is not easy. To get a visa to travel is not easy. No free movement of people. No free movement of goods. Too many tariff and non-tariff barriers. I'm aware that since the year 2021, you now have the headquarters of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. But are we moving goods? Can you move goods easily from Cote d'Ivoire to Ghana? From Liberia to Ghana? From Ghana to Senegal? From Guinea-Bissau to Togo? The answer is no. So the time is now, and I'm very happy that this year has been declared the year where the African Union is going to focus on free movement of goods and services. I hope that is not just another round of giving promises to ourselves. Look at the multiplicity of currencies that we have here. You move here, cedi. You move there, CFA franc. You move there, naira. You move there, dalasi. And all these are weak currencies. 90% of trade in West Africa and the continent of Africa is terminated in dollars. We must de-dollarize our economies if we are going to be independent. If we don't de-dollarize our economies, we are susceptible to manipulation. Just see how your seed is behaving. And if you go to Malawi, see how the kwacha is behaving. Come to Kenya, see how the shilling is behaving. When we talk about hard currency, do you ever hear any African country described as a hard currency? What is the opposite of hard? Soft. So currencies are currencies that can't stand up. And this sometimes, when I see the leaders of Africa meet in Addis Ababa, I sometimes ask, they should just have 3 agenda items. What is wrong with us? Agenda item number 1. What can we do about what is wrong with us? Agenda item number 2. Number 3, within what period can we repair what is wrong with us? Otherwise, as the former vice president of Zambia, Simon Kapwepwe, once said, and I agree with him, those who left as colonizers will come as investors, and this time round, the colonization will be economic. And it's already there. You see it even in this economy. Ask yourself, who controls the Ghanaian economy? Ask yourself. We must ask and answer uncomfortable questions. We have been good and nice to each other for too long. On the evidence that I see on a daily basis as I travel across Africa, I don't see it. We've got to pause and ask ourselves and do things that are going to lead us into that independence. Africa is still divided. The former British colonies are still grouped as the Commonwealth of Nations, with the king as the head of them. How can you be independent in that way? The former French colonies are grouped as former French colonies and are controlled from Paris. The former Portuguese colonies are equally controlled. The African Union is 70% financed from outside. Until and unless we change, Africa is slowly and surely getting into the clutches of the neo-colonizers. And I want to remind you of a thing that has happened in the last 2 months. In the last 2 months, we have had the Russian foreign minister here talking about Russian interest. We have had the Chinese foreign minister here. We have had the French president here. We have had the Turkish president here. We have had all these people coming to Africa. There is a new scramble for Africa. This is how colonization started. And it was not lost on me that we had the Roman Catholic Pope here. We had the head of the Anglican Church here. We had the head of the Presbyterian Church here. The same triumvirate that came during the colonization was here in the last 2 months. You are posing questions to me. You will be colonized again. What you'll remain with are elections, where you elect presidents and have ministers who look like you, but they are simply robots and marionettes to be controlled from Paris, Washington, London, and of course Brussels and other parts of the world, and Beijing and Moscow.